My friends made a plan to cheat, but our husbands got ruthless revenge.
Show me your friend, and I will tell you who you are. I never took that saying seriously, but after what Melody and I did, it has become my motto. Like, I don't even know what happened or how it happened, but it happened. I still can't believe I let Melody talk me into doing something that would haunt me till I am 6 feet under the ground. I know you may think I am overreacting or exaggerating, but believe me when I say this. I am not. As it stands now, I have nothing and nobody to my name. Even as I type this, I am still shocked as to how everything turned out. Ladies and gentlemen, the three of us, me, myself and I thought it was a great idea to humor the advice and stupid suggestions of the person we called a friend, and the aftermath of the advice, disastrous. Words cannot even describe how I feel now. I can't even get angry at Melody because if only I had been more careful and behaved more like a wife instead of a silly teenage girl, all this wouldn't have been happening. Ladies and gentlemen, I am writing this from the not-so-comfortable seat in my car. Yes, my car. I could rant all day and beat myself up for years to come, but I want you all to know the full story, and then I would actually like it if you guys judge the matter. I mean, there isn't much to judge, but still I would like it if you guys did. It's currently 12:30 a.m., and I have a meeting in the next 9 hours, and the outcome of that meeting would determine how the rest of my life would go. Now let me take you back to the beginning. When and how I met the woman who made me lose everything over a silly and stupid bet. I don't even know how I would get through this whole story because I would always cry each time I remember everything that has happened to this very moment. Now my tears are that of anger and regret. I really hope I can control my emotions to write this. Now let the journey begin. Hi, my name is Sarah, and I was born as an only girl to a family that already birthed 5 boys. So as you can imagine, I was spoiled silly. We lived in, and to be honest, growing up with boys was quite fun, but I always had that desperate feeling of wanting a sister around me. Someone I could talk with about girl stuff, so you can imagine my excitement when I met Melody, and we immediately clicked. Melody was a blonde while I was a brunette. As a blonde and brunette duo who weren't among the popular and cool kids, we were always hit with jokes from guys during our high school days, but all that changed when we entered college. We both got accepted into Florida State University. I studied theater arts while Melody studied psychology. Now I don't want to make this longer than it should be, but I will tell you that the courses we studied in college really played a huge role in our college and dating lives. We had this thing, or rather the pact we made with each other, and it really worked till we both graduated. The pact was that we wouldn't date till a certain age. To be honest, I don't know why that pact was even made in the first place. We didn't even have any luck with guys till our final year in college, and that was mostly because we both decided that we would start attending parties and go on various adventures that college students go on. It didn't really affect our studies, but I personally feel like Melody changed after all that. Melody had always been a quiet and reserved girl, but once we started attending those parties, she developed a wild side. She would always come back to our hostel wasted and high, or even not come back at all. Don't get me wrong here, I am not trying to say that she was the bad one and I was the good one. Oh heavens, no. If anything, I feel like I was the bad one, but I could control myself and hold down alcohol, but not Melody. She was like a bird that they let out of its cage after years of being inside it. She just wanted to do and try everything. If I decide to talk about all the things Melody and I did in college, then trust me, you would not even be able to drop your phone or PC till the next day, so let's move forward to the next part of my downfall. Now, after we graduated, we both moved into our own place and started working. She worked while I worked in a school by day and at a bar by night. I chose those 2 choices because I wanted to. I've always loved children, but I also love the nightlife, so I figured why not have 2 of them? Things were going really well for both of us, except we couldn't seem to find a decent man to enter a relationship with. All that changed when we met Andre and Louis. Louis and Melody didn't really like each other when they first met. In fact, they hated each other so much even a stranger could feel the hatred between them, but Andre and I feel head over heels in love with each other the very moment we met. Melody wasn't in support of it at first, and even Louis didn't approve of it, but 4 dates and 2 fights later, the 4 of us were seated in a 5-star restaurant having a double date. Just when I thought everything was going well, Andre proposes to me and, well, of course I said yes. Why wouldn't I? Louis proposed to Melody at my wedding, and before you start saying that he should have waited till the next day or that he stole the spotlight from me, he didn't. I actually wanted him to do it on that day, and I helped plan everything out. She said yes, and honestly, that just made the wedding 100 times better. Now this is where everything gets interesting. I got married before Melody, but I actually convinced, or rather nagged to Andre that I wanted to have our honeymoon at the same time and place Melody and Lois had theirs. I know. It was too much, and honestly, I don't even know I wanted to do that, but Andre, being the sweet and lovely husband that he is, he agreed to my crazy request, and we postponed our honeymoon till after Melody and Louis's wedding. We both traveled to Rome for our honeymoon, and honestly, it was really nice. We visited many beautiful sites, such as the Trevi Fountain and the Pantheon. We spent some weeks there before coming back to start life as a married couple. As you must have guessed, I resigned from my bar job and focused fully on being a teacher. And boy, was it boring. Don't get me wrong, I love kids, but when you see the same thing every day for 6 months straight, thighs tend to get boring. Melody, on the other hand, kept her job and seemed to enjoy it more now she was married. I don't know why or how that was even possible, but she loved it. We always met up for lunch 3 times a week and dinner with our husbands once a month. It became like a ritual for us, and we loved it. And now, before I go further, it's important to note that I already had a son for my husband while Melody and Louis had decided not to have kids. Well, it was mostly Melody's decision, and Louis loves her too much to say no. That alone should have been my excuse to not go along with Melody's plan. I should have told her that I was a mother and wife. I should have fought harder, but that's the problem. I couldn't fight harder because I didn't fight at all. I just let Melody talk me into it, and I swallowed everything hook, line, and sinker. How weak was I? How stupid no? How dumb was I? You know, it's easier to say yes, a stupid and dangerous plan, if it was coming from someone you trust. Sorry, I digress. I am just so upset that I threw caution to the wind and ended up here typing my life mistakes to strangers online so that they would learn from my mistakes. But enough of all that. Back to the story. On one of our usual lunch dates, Melody came in beaming with joy, and I couldn't tell why. I placed our orders while Melody was on her phone talking to her receptionist. I studied her closely to know if Louis had bought her some new jewelry, but there was nothing new on her. I looked outside, thinking that she had gotten a new car, but I saw her blue Mercedes-Benz parked across the street. I thought maybe she had been promoted, but she was now the head psychologist at the hospital she works in, so a promotion was not possible anymore. There was only one option left, and that was her being pregnant. Yes, maybe she had changed her mind, and now she was pregnant. As the thought crossed my mind, I started smiling, happy that our children would become best friends and maybe even end up as a couple. I was so lost in thought that Melody had to tap my hand in order for her to bring me back to reality. I looked at her and apologized for spacing out. That's fine. I guess I took too long on my call, but it's over and now our lunch date can properly begin, she said while smiling. Our food came and we started eating. While eating, Melody talked about her work and her patients. Yes, I know. The whole doctor-patient confidentiality, but then it's not like I was telling anyone ever, and I am pretty sure that if the tables were turned, I would do the same thing. We talked and laughed till it was 3:30 p.m. and it was time to leave. I was about finishing my drink when Melody reached out and grabbed my hand. I was shocked, so I kept the glass of juice down. I asked her what the matter was, and with a big smile, she told me that she had some wonderful news she wanted to share with me. I chuckled and told her that I already knew that he was pregnant. I was about to tell her that I hoped the child would be a girl when I saw the look on her face and stopped. She had this confused and slightly disgusted look on her face. When I asked her what the matter was, she didn't respond. She just said, "Who told you that ridiculous lie?" I was speechless. So she wasn't pregnant. But why was she so happy? I apologized and explained that I assumed she was pregnant because of the way she had been acting since she arrived. I further told her that I didn't see any new car or jewelry, so I ruled that out, and I knew she couldn't be promoted anymore at her job, so that was also out. Eliminating these two left me with the baby, but if that is also wrong, then what's the matter? After listening to me, she smiled, took my left hand and placed it in between both her hands before saying the words that still haunt me to this day. I had just picked up my glass of juice to drink when she said these words. "I want us to sleep with each other's husband." The moment those words left her mouth, the remaining contents of my mouth found its way to her face. "What the hell? Why would you do that?" she yelled, but not so loud. She began wiping her face while I sat there looking at her. She must be joking. She had to be. I told myself otherwise. Why would she say something so silly and unreasonable? You know, a normal person would have laughed at Melody, gotten up, left the restaurant, gone home, and never speak of it again. But then there's me. The unbelievably stupid character who just sat there and waited for Melody to explain. I mean, what other explanation did I need? It was a stupid idea, and a dangerous one at that. A part of me wanted to shun Melody and warn her never to bring it up, but then another part of me wanted to know how and why she came up with such an idea. "What are you talking about?" I finally asked Melody, and she said that she heard about it from her colleague. She said that her colleague and her sister had done it with their boyfriends, and it was just to test their loyalty. Did you see the keyword there? No? All right, I will tell you. The keyword was boyfriends, not husbands. Boyfriends, and yet my supposed best friend was suggesting something so similar and stupid to me. People of this fine earth, do you know what I did after Melody finished explaining everything to me? I told her that I would think about it and give her my response the next day. That night, as I laid in bed with my husband, I actually thought about how it would feel to share the same bed with Louis. I wasn't a bad wife or anything, but after having that conversation with Melody, my curiosity got the best of me. The next day, I called her up and told her I was going to go through with her plan. She was so happy that she squealed into the phone. She said she would text me the details later before she hung up. As I laid down on my bed, a million thoughts ran through my head, but only 4 words seemed to stand out. What have I gotten myself into? I got her text later that day. She stated that we would become so impossible that our husbands would come to complain to us, but eventually take comfort in us. Melody's husband would come to complain to me about Melody, but over time I would take advantage of his vulnerability and sleep with him. Okay, pause. How in the name of all things beautiful did I even think that any of this was okay? How was it okay to allow your friend to seduce your husband? How was it even okay to think about it? I would have sworn that Melody was a witch if I didn't know her so well. I agreed, and we were meant to start the next day. Now I know my husband and I know how to push his buttons. I did all the things that Andre didn't like and made it seem like Melody was the only one he could complain to about me. The same thing was happening to Louis, and after 3 days, I got a call from Louis complaining that Melody had suddenly changed. He even told me that he suspected her of cheating on him, but I told him that she would not do that to him. Before long, Louis and I started meeting outside to talk about Melody, and I think Andre and Melody also started meeting. Melody and I always meet secretly to go about our plan and to see how everything is going. Although it was hard to treat my baby daddy and husband in such a manner, it was funny to hear about it from him. One day, Melody called me and told me that it was time to seduce and sleep with them. Again, my dumb self did not see the problem with this plan. I didn't shout at her nor demand that she stop. Instead, I agreed and waited for my usual meetup with Louis, but asked him to come over to the house. Andre was going to be with Melody, so I had the house to myself all night. I had dropped my son at my parents' house, so it was just the 2 of us. When Louis arrived, I brought out a bottle of wine and poured a glass for each of us. After his 3rd cup, Louis was already drunk, but not too drunk not to know when to stop. The both of us were on the floor talking when we started leaning close to each other. This was it, I thought. Louis would remember how much he loved Melody and stop. The only problem was, he wasn't stopping and neither was I. What was happening? Why wasn't I stopping? I didn't stop when our lips met. I didn't stop when we got up from the floor, and I didn't stop till the only thing I could see and hear was nothing. I woke up the next morning, but there was no Louis. As I tried to recall what happened, I heard the tap running in the bathroom. I noticed that I was completely naked and immediately reached for the bedcloth to tie around my body. Almost immediately, the events of the previous night flood my mind and I almost fall down. What have I done? I had cheated on my husband. I got up and moved to the bathroom. I knocked on the door and said, "Louis, come outside, we need to talk about Leigh." But before I could finish my sentence, my husband came out of the bathroom tying a towel on his waist. I froze. What was happening? Why was he back so soon? Did he see Louis? All these thoughts ran through my head, but I was interrupted by Andre's voice. "What happened to Louis?" he asked while drying his hair. "Oh, nothing. Nothing. He had called me last night to talk about Melody and the gift he wanted to get her, but I dozed off on him, so I felt bad and wanted to finish the conversation." I lied. He looked at me and down at my hand before saying, "But you don't have your phone." I froze, but then remembered that I was wearing one of my AirPods, so I pointed to it and said I was leaving a voice message for him. Stupid, I know, but somehow it worked, and soon Andre left for work. The moment he left, I called Melody, but she didn't pick up. I tried again, but it went to voicemail instead. I panicked and was scared for the worst. What if Louis saw Andre driving out of his house and confronted Melody? I immediately took a shower and drove to Melody's place. I noticed that her car wasn't there, so I went to her workplace. I was so relieved to see her car, but even more relieved to see Melody, and she was all right. I pulled her aside and asked her where her phone was. She told me that she left it at home. She had an early appointment that she couldn't miss. I heaved a sigh of relief, but then told her that we needed to talk. She asked me to wait for her since it was almost her lunch break, and I agreed. Once Melody was free, we went to a cafe, sat down, then I broke down. I told Melody what happened, and she didn't seem bothered or upset. Her face just went blank. She didn't say anything. She just got up, slapped me, and left. I'm still seating in my car, in front of the cafe. My left cheek still stings from the slap. I'm afraid to go home. What if Andre finds out? What if Melody tells him? Did Melody not go through with her plan? And where was Louis? Guys, that's where I stop for now. I'll update you all if anything happens. Hey guys, it's me again. I have an update for you guys, and to be honest, it's quite a lot, but I promised to give you guys an update, so here it is. Now, the last time I wrote something, I had just been slapped by Melody inside a cafe, and I didn't know if I should go home or not. After an hour of just sitting in my car, I decided to go home. I got home and Andre was home, but something felt off. Andre wasn't his usual self. He seemed distant and cold towards me. What if he knows now? I asked myself. I couldn't bring myself to ask him, so I just let it be. After dinner, Andre took a bath and got into bed. Next thing I knew, he was cuddling me. I was confused and asked him if he was all right. He said he was fine and that he just had a rough day at work, but being with me just made everything better. I smiled and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He didn't know. I was safe. The next day was normal with Andre. The moment he left for work, I tried to call Melody, and to my greatest surprise, she picked the call. "What?" she answered. "Mel, we need to talk," I said softly. Mel was a name I always called her when I wanted us to fix things between us. We agreed to meet at the park, and once we saw each other, I started crying. Next thing I knew, Melody started crying too. She apologized for slapping me and also told me that she had slept with Andre too. I was shattered, but at least now she would call it quits to this silly game of hers, and she did. I asked her if Louis acted strange to her, but she said no. Melody said that Louis had been acting normal as though nothing happened. That was the main reason she slapped me. She was hurt that Louis could easily keep his infidelity from her. Yes, I know. She was actually trying to play the victim. But when I told her about Andre, she kept quiet. We talked for another 30 minutes before going back to our houses. I finally thought that everything was fine now. Oh, how wrong I was. K the disaster. One day I got a call from Louis, asking me to meet him. I didn't want to, but then he threatened to tell Andre what happened, and I was left with no choice. I told him to meet me at the park the next day. When Louis came, he looked terrible. He had eye bags under his eyes, his hair was messy, and he just looked off. I asked him what happened, but he wouldn't say anything. After 3 minutes of silence, he grabs my hands and says, "I can't take this anymore. Sarah, I need you." Huh? I retrieve my hands and shift a bit before asking him what he meant. He told me that he hasn't been able to think straight since that night. He said he tried to forget everything, but he couldn't. He proceeds to go down on his knees to beg me. I couldn't take it anymore. I just ran. Ran to my car, then drove home, not caring that I left him on his knees in a public place. I didn't know what to do. Should I call Melody? Would she even believe me? Would she believe that the very man that worshipped the ground she walked was asking me to be his? No. She wouldn't believe me. I can't even believe it. But what do I do? What? I was so lost in thought that I didn't hear Andre walk in. I had already put our son to sleep, so it was just me in the living room. Andre came in and gave me a peck on my cheek. The moment he came close, I perceived something, but I couldn't wrap my head around what it was at that moment, so I just let it go. That night was so passionate for both of us that I immediately forgot about Louis and his confession. The next day was a Sunday, and Andre informed me that he would be taking a work trip in the next 4 days. I had no issues with it. At least it would give me time to think about Louis and his issues. Melody and I didn't talk for some days, and I was worried Louis told her how he felt about me. I really wished everything would just go back to normal, but sadly, that would never work. On the day of Andres' work trip, he left for the airport around 8 a.m., so you can imagine my surprise when Louis called to see me at his place. I refused to come, then he offered to take me somewhere else. I realized that I had to turn him down once and for all, so I decided to meet him. We met at what seemed to be a small bed and breakfast. I told him that I didn't want to be there, but he said all he wanted to do was talk and that once it's over, I would never hear from him again. I didn't understand his last statement, but I agreed. Ladies and gentlemen, what I saw and heard was not, and I repeat, not what I expected. Just behind the door was Melody snuggling with my husband, the one who was meant to be on a work trip. The moment Melody saw me, she jumped off him and asked me what I was doing there. "What am I doing here? Why are you here with my husband?" I shouted. Melody was about to speak when Louis slammed the door and ordered us both to sit down and keep quiet. Now Andre got up and walked up to me and said, "Your husband? The same husband you allowed your friend to seduce?" The moment he said that, my eyes widened. He knew. "Yes, I know. Matter of fact, we both know," he said while pointing to Louis. "You both thought we wouldn't figure out a pattern? There was no way you both would suddenly start acting up at the same time. We wanted to know what the goal was, and sadly you showed us. You see, that night you had your steamy session with Louis, we both saw it coming. I saw it coming, but I wanted to see how far you'd actually go." As he said those words, tears filled my eyes and I started apologizing. "What are you sorry for? You didn't sleep with Louis. Yes, you see, unlike you, Louis has some self-respect. I was the one you slept with, but I wore Louis's clothes and smelt like him. Luckily, you were too drunk to even notice." Upon hearing this, Melody started laughing. "You're lying. I was with you the whole night, remember?" she said shamelessly. "No, my dear, you fell asleep and I went home. Oh, and did. You tell your friend that you have been trying to seduce me way before all this." The moment he said this, I looked at Melody, but she didn't say a word. "Oh yes, your wonderful friend here has been trying to lure me to bed, and she came up with this stupid plan as the perfect way to get me. But she wanted to keep me forever. That's why I lied that I was going to leave you for her. She immediately got the divorce papers signed and left Louis. Now back to the same quest I asked earlier. Your husband? Oh no. I'm sorry, but this marriage is over and I am taking my son with me." Without another word, he walked out with Louis, and I haven't seen him or my son. I still have the divorce papers, but I can't sign it. I don't know what happened to Melody after all that. And to be honest with you, I really hope she never sees happiness ever again. That's all, guys. There's no more update. I lost my son, husband, and house in all this mess. Guess I deserved it, though. Picture a young girl with short hair and an average face growing up in an average family. My family wasn't rich, but they did their best to take care of me. I was bullied as a kid, so I was more of a loner than others. I didn't have many friends, not until my brother came along. His name is John. He was my best friend, and he still is. I was 5 years old when I held his small body in my hand. He practically followed me around everywhere. When I got into college, he didn't want me to go, and he cried. I shouldn't have gone, but I can't change anything that has happened, and I know that. Along the line, I started becoming an extrovert, and I was able to talk more with others. A lot of things have happened since then. I was also able to stand up for myself. I'm married now, and my life was going great, not until Alex, my ex-boyfriend, entered the picture. John didn't like Alex much, but I think it was a guy thing. You're probably wondering why I'm telling you all this, and you don't understand. So I'll start from the beginning. My name is Emily, and I want to tell you a story. I'm not a writer, so pardon me if there's any mistakes, but I'll make sure you'll understand what I'm telling you. This is my story, and I need everyone's help because I don't know what to do. I'll start from the beginning of my married life. I met Stan when I was 21 years old. We were both done with university, and since then, we hit it off. I gave him the cold shoulder at first. He never gave up on me, but the way he acted was different from Alex, not like I'm comparing. He's a really sweet and caring guy. We dated for a year plus, and he introduced me to his family. I loved his family, and they also loved me. It was great. Stan proposed to me, and I said yes. The marriage went smoothly. It was a very small wedding at a small church, and we invited just a few friends and family members. I didn't want something large because I hated being around crowds, and he respected that. I remember telling him the words, "I do." To be honest, I was scared of getting married because I didn't want it to hold me down, but eventually I had the courage. We've been married for a year now, and some problem came up. The first one is that I couldn't get pregnant, and I don't know why. Okay, maybe I know why, but we're trying to work on it. The doctor said I don't have enough eggs to fertilize, and I don't even know what that means. It's really upsetting because his family and also mine kept bothering me when we were going to get a baby. I don't know how to tell them that we're trying, but I know it's anytime soon. If nothing works, we have no choice but to say something. I would list the other issues as I keep writing. My husband, Stan, and I live in this 3-bedroom apartment which he bought, and I'm really proud of him. He also has this job that he's doing. I can't say where, but all I can say is that he's a lawyer. From someone who came from a very average home, I would say this is a huge job, and I can't stop bragging about it to my friends. I also have a teaching job. I teach kids in kindergarten, and I have to say that it's a really fun thing to do. I really want kids of my own, and we're still trying to figure something out. Now, picture a Wednesday evening where the sun rays are shining since it was summer. My friends came over that evening for our little book club that we do. I love reading books, and I also met others who do. There are 3 of them. There's Sarah, she's the nerdest in the group, and she's fun to be around. There's also Tracy, who is the hottest in the group, or at least the other friends say that. And the last one is Anna. She's the clown of the group because she makes everyone laugh. You can say that I'm kind of in between everything, and I love myself for that. It was my day off from work then because I was a bit of a part-time teacher. I only go to work on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, so Wednesday and Thursdays were my day off during the weekdays. Stan was at work that day, and I was having fun with my friends. We discussed a lot of things. It was already late, so they told me bye, and I escorted them out. I heard my phone vibrate, and I thought, who would be calling me right now? I didn't hear it vibrate anymore, so I figured out it was a text. I don't receive texts except for my mail concerning a work-related thing, so this was surprising. When I checked it, it was from an unknown number. I was very curious now. I opened the message and I was shocked. The message was from Alex, my ex, who I hadn't heard from in more than a year. He didn't even come to my wedding, not like I was expecting him to. I knew this was him because the text he sent was, "Hey Em, it's Alex. I don't know if you still remember me, but hit me up if you do." You might be thinking, I know many Alex. Or maybe you're not, but the point is that he's the only one that calls me Em. I was wondering how he got my number, considering I didn't think he'd have it with him. And before I could even think of texting him then, my phone crashed. There's another story for that. I met Alex when I was in college. I was a freshman and he was a sophomore. He was this proud person who I didn't like at first. He assumed everyone was in love with him because he was this handsome guy, and I didn't like it because he was right. And most of my friends had a crush on him and pushed themselves on him. I tried my best to ignore him every time, but for unknown reasons, he kept trying to come closer to me. I noticed this at first, but I tried to ignore it. Perhaps I was just overthinking it. I figured it out when he came to me in person trying to start a conversation with me, but I only walked away. I didn't want attention to myself, and I intended to be very low-key, but he was trying to make things worse for me. He came again to me, and I spoke my mind to him. I asked him why he was trying to talk to him when clearly there were other girls that wanted him, and he only scoffed. He talked about how he didn't care about others, and he's been watching me from afar. I laughed because that was creepy, but I still didn't believe him. He tried getting closer to me every time, by talking to me, walking with me, and even telling everyone that I was his very good friend. Each day, it looked like the girls around hated me while my friends showed that they were jealous. A month had passed and Alex asked me out. I turned him down at first, and he never gave up. He told me he liked me and wanted to date me. I didn't believe him because boys weren't trustworthy, especially not in college. Yet Alex didn't give up and he kept trying to go out with me, but I said no. There was a day where I finally said yes and agreed to go out with me. He looked so excited about it, and that made me smile too. I asked him where we would be going, and he said he was going to come pick me up at home. He knew where I lived since he walked home with me sometimes. I told my mom and dad about the date, and they smiled. I was 18 then, so they said they would let me go on the date with him. I did everything to look extra pretty for him. I didn't completely like him, but maybe I did feel something for him. He came over and he was amazed when he saw my short hair let down even when I usually packed it up in school. His eyes also scanned my blue dress that I wore. I hoped it wasn't too much. I scanned him too and thought he looked really good with the black suit he wore. At first I hoped my dressing wasn't too much. Now I was thinking I didn't dress well. He greeted my parents and they investigated him before they let us go. We laughed at that because his voice was shaky throughout. I apologized to him for the pressure they were putting on him. John was also around, but he just glared at him, and it was funny because it made Alex uncomfortable. We went to his car, and he opened the door for me just like a gentleman. I was honestly delighted by that. He also complimented me, which took me aback. He had given me compliments, but not as sincere as this. Alex took me to a fancy restaurant, which was my first time there, coming from an average family. I thought dates were burgers or pizza places. That night, Alex and I discussed a lot of things. I found out things about him. He told me he was an artist, and I was amazed. No one knew about that except one close friend that he trusted them not to tell anyone. The fact that Alex had a hobby like that was what surprised me more. We ordered some food, and even the food was fancy and tasted good. I asked Alex to show me his art, and he brought out his phone and showed me some that he snapped. I remember one which was a little girl holding a flower, and it was something I'd never seen before. It was a unique drawing, and he had talent. I also told him things about me, about my family, and where I come from. I asked him when he started liking me, and he said, "It just happened." My first kiss was with him, and it was a blissful memory. The night was over before we knew it. I hated how the night ended so quickly because I wanted to spend more time with him. He took me home, and I told him bye. The next day was almost the same as every day, except this time I accepted Alex, and everyone knew we were dating. This went on for almost a year before things changed. He told me he wanted to talk to me. I was scared because of the tone with which he said. I was thinking if he was fed up with me and wanted to break up. I wouldn't be surprised if it was that. But what he told me was different. He said he was going to travel out of the country to pursue his studies in art. That was a great thing to me because I remember asking him if he had any plans since he was great at it. I knew there was something more with the way he looked at me, and I feared that I knew what it was. He told me he had to break up because he couldn't have a long-distance relationship. I remember begging him not to, that we could work on it. I also remember telling him that I liked him so much and I wanted to have something with him, but he kept turning me down and said he couldn't work out. We maintained distance then, and I was pissed. I was angry at him but more at myself because I wanted someone and the person didn't. He tried talking to me sometimes, but I didn't want to hear anything from him. He left the country some days after and he didn't even say goodbye. I was pissed because he had my number and he couldn't call. I also had his number, but I couldn't give up my pride to text or call first. Around that time, my phone got damaged and I lost all the contacts. I didn't think I'd be hearing from Alex. Well, at least, not until now. I was still looking at the message and contemplating whether I should reply back or not. I did what my instinct said, and I replied to him. I was hesitant and walked around wondering if he would text back. I was thinking maybe he texted me by mistake, and my silly mind replied to him, and it was probably a joke. My phone vibrated after a few minutes, and I immediately checked it. His message read, "Hey, it's been long. I know it's weird that I was expecting his text, but it didn't mean anything. I just felt glad that I meant something to him and he still remembered me. I should have stopped texting him then, but a part of me wanted to talk to him, so that's how it started." We kept texting back and forth each day. Alex informed me about lots of things. It was all through texts. but I know we shared a lot of feelings too. He informed me about how his study in arts went well. He asked me things about what I was doing and about my career. I thought about whether I should lie at first, but I couldn't because I love my husband. I told Alex that I was married and he didn't reply. I was thinking maybe it was a bad idea, but my mind changed when he texted me back. He told me it was great that I was married and he hoped I was happy. It didn't sound sincere to me when I read it, but I left it at that. It's been a week since we were chatting and everything was going great. He asked me where I was staying now because he wanted to come visit. I was against it, but it didn't seem bad since it was just an old friend who's also an ex. There was just one problem, and it was that Stan didn't know. I didn't know if I should tell him because it was concerning my ex, and he knew all about our past. I was looking for something to justify what I was doing. I tried telling myself that there's nothing wrong in texting an ex. Alex and I kept texting, talking about life and sharing more things. I made a mistake one day. I still didn't see the use of telling my husband about him since it was just Alex and I. I was chatting with Alex one day, and Stan asked me why I was always on the phone. He knew I didn't text much, so it looked weird to him. I don't know why I lied and told him it was nobody. I left my phone for a second to go to take out the trash, and when I came back, I saw my phone in his hand. I became angry, and I don't know why. I think one of the reasons is because I was wondering why my phone was in his hand. It meant he didn't trust me. I was also angry at myself because I knew I would have to tell him the truth. He looked at me and I asked him what he was doing with my phone. He said a call came in, but he had a question for me. Who was Alex? He knew about my ex, Alex, but he wanted to confirm it was him. I asked him why he was looking at my texts, but he didn't answer me. Can you believe that? He went on with the questions, and I told him the truth about how it was my ex. He frowned and shouted, asking about why I would be texting my ex. I told him it was no big deal, and he should stop making it sound huge. He was exaggerating. I mean, it's normal to text your ex, right? I also argued with him that it wasn't me that texted him first, and he was the one. It's just a longtime friend of the past. Yet Stan kept overreacting, saying he texted for a purpose, but I don't believe that. He told me to stop texting Alex, but I don't want to. Is that bad? Imagine how much he would react if I said he wanted to visit, though I don't want Alex coming between Stan and I. I collected my phone from him and went out for a walk. Stan kept telling me to come back because we were still talking, but I didn't want this conversation to keep going. I needed to clear my head. I don't know what to do right now because I'm stuck. Should I keep texting with Alex? It's not like he said he wanted to go out with me or anything. Even if he says that one day, it wouldn't bring any harm because we were friends. Or should I not text him anymore and listen to my husband? What if he truly has a purpose like he said? My mind is all jumbled up right now, so I need advice on what to do. Please help. Comments. 1. You, Reddit user 1. What's wrong with you? I mean that in the most absurd way. Because why would you want to choose an ex over your own husband? You do love him, yes? Something tells me that you don't. It's best if you think well on it because he probably deserves someone better than you. Why did you keep it secret from him in the first page if you had nothing to hide? 2. You, Reddit user 2. You, Reddit user 1. This is a tough situation, so don't be too hard on her. She came here because she wanted advice, so stop judging her. Emily, I believe you should take time to calm down and think well about this. Your husband may be right, it's not a normal thing for an ex to text you just to greet you. He also says he wants to visit. What normal person would want to visit their married ex? You should have a deep talk with Stan and tell him all about these, especially your feelings. You two sound like you have a great and special marriage. It shouldn't ruin so easily. 3. You, Reddit user 3. Why is no one talking about Alex? I'm only seeing talks about Emily and her husband. Hello, there's literally an ex here. Who's the problem? I believe Emily should contact Alex. You two have only been talking through texts, and you also don't know much about him. All you know is that he's in the city and he wants to meet you. So don't do silly things like keeping things from your husband and talk to him about it, so you two will be able to solve this issue. Talk to Alex. 4. You Reddit user 4. Something tells me that you're the problem. Women never appreciate something good in front of them. Instead, they want the good thing they had in the past. You should fix this and don't let your marriage get destroyed. Update. It's been days since I had an argument with my husband. I tried talking to him, but he said he didn't want to talk to me till I did something about Alex. I also read the comments. Wow, there were some really mean ones, but I realized you guys were right. I was the problem right now. I love Stan, and even though Alex was a past thing, I still had a little bit of feelings for him. But this was only because he suddenly wanted to come back into my life. I talked to John, my brother I talked about in the beginning, and I told him that Alex was back. He sounded furious over the phone, and I told him the things that had happened. He said Alex couldn't come back and try to pry into my life when I'm finally happy. I talked to my close friends, if you still remember them, the ones from the book club. They also gave me some good advice like you all did, and it was to communicate with my husband. I begged him to talk to me. He finally agreed, and he asked me who I made up my mind on. Was it him or Alex? I shook my head and held his hands because that was an absurd question now that I heard it. I can't believe I wanted to destroy my marriage because of someone I felt something for before. I apologized, and Lee told Stan I chose him over and over again, and everything's normal now. The only problem remaining was Alex. He kept texting me and asking when we were going to meet, but I tried my best to ignore him. You're thinking why I didn't block him, but I didn't want to come off too strong, although that probably sounds like an excuse. Alex began calling me because he noticed, but I didn't answer. The phone calls became more too. Stan went to work one day, and it was on one of my days off when Alex called in. I answered it after staring at it for a few seconds, and I heard his voice. It had been so long since I heard his voice. It sounded deeper and different than the one I'd heard. It's been 3 weeks since he texted me, and I was just hearing his voice. But this time, I didn't feel the emotion anymore. I'm happy about that because I wasn't so sure. I didn't want to be attached to my ex while being with my husband. Alex said hi over the phone, and I answered him. He said my voice has changed, and I said the same. He asked me why I didn't text him anymore, and why I was ignoring his calls, so I told him the truth. I told him Stan and I were not comfortable with it. I didn't bother going into any further details because it was none of his business. I told him not to bother calling me anymore. He protested at first, saying he didn't see anything wrong in a friend calling a friend. I told him he didn't need to see that, but he just needed to know. I did ask why he suddenly texted me one day, and he told me the truth. He said because he missed me and missed what he had. He told me he felt disappointed when I said I was married. That made me cringe in a way, because was he expecting me to wait for him and accept him once he was back? It's been 3 years since I met Stan, and meeting him changed my whole life. I feel happier with him. Anyways, like I said, I told him it didn't matter and he should stop trying. He apologized to me and the call ended. Once Stan came back, I told him everything that we discussed and what had happened. I promised him I won't ever let anything come between me and him because I love him. I'm happy I got married. We also discussed more things about us going to the doctor concerning the pregnancy, or we might just adopt if nothing works. Thanks to everyone here that gave me all of this advice and helped me save my marriage.